WordPress is written in the scripting language PHP, and we've seen that in the template files we've looked at. Now, you don't need to know a lot of PHP in order to work with them, but you need to know some, and I'm assuming here that you don't have any PHP background whatsoever, so let's start from scratch. This, of course, is a template file, loop.php, and you can see there's a lot going on here, and it can get a little bit intimidating if we don't sort of understand what all the structures are and what the syntax is. So let's take a look at these right now. The basic syntax of PHP means that any file that's going to use PHP, even if it's just a line of it, has to have that extension, .php. And all the template files in an existing theme will have that, but if you're adding to it, if you're creating your own template files, you've got to make sure you save them ending in .php. Now, even when it's .php, you still have to tell the system that you're now executing some PHP code, and you do that by using these brackets, beginning and ending brackets. Every block of code has to be enclosed that way, and you'll see we go in and out. Like there's a line, we're only doing one thing on that line, but it has to be enclosed in PHP brackets. Same with that. See, we're in and out the whole time. You have to keep doing that constantly. Every line of code also has to end with a semicolon. Now you'll say sometimes, wait a minute, not all of them, like this one right here, doesn't end in a semicolon. Well, that's because it's part of one basic line of code, an if-else statement. But notice when we get to the end of the if statement, yes, you have your semicolon at the end. Commenting is a very important part of writing PHP code because it's helpful to other people who may be coming in and looking at the file later, just as we saw with template files in the 2010 theme. But it's also helpful to yourself, right? 6 months later, what was I doing there? Even a day later, what was I doing there? Make it clear to yourself exactly what you were doing. A single line, you can easily just use these 2 slashes, maybe a couple lines, but if you get longer than that, you want to use this opening and closing, and then you can make as many comments as you want in between. And you noticed in loop.php they have quite extensive commenting, and it's very, very helpful. All right, variables. We're going to be using these a lot in PHP, so let's understand how they work. You must start a variable with a $sign. Now, if you've worked with other scripting languages, they may have required you to state your variables, declare your variables first before you assign any values to them. And the way you assign values to the variable is with the equal sign. And it's a very common mistake to think of this as the equal sign. It's not. It's an assignment. It's an assignment operator, that is. In this case, I'm assigning the string George, a set of letters or words, a string, is being assigned to the variable my name. In this case, I'm assigning an integer to my number. You can also assign Boolean values to a variable, true or false. Then we get down to the actual naming of the variable. Now you could name it this way, but I find it difficult, especially as names get longer, so I tend to separate them this way with an uppercase at the beginning of a word. You can also use the dash or an underscore. You cannot leave a space though. This would simply be the variable my. And don't use all uppercase because that's reserved for a special kind of variable called a constant. You might see those occasionally, for instance, in the wp-config file, they're defining a number of constants there. You probably aren't going to use those, but that's why we don't use all uppercase when we're naming a variable. Those are some beginning elements of PHP, and we'll talk a bit more about conditionals as well as some common errors that you might make in PHP.